and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we are going to dive into the world of Wicked, but not just the magic, catchy choreography, and enchanting musical numbers. We are going to talk about how disability is portrayed in both the film version of Wicked and the stage musical Wicked, and there is some controversy over whether or not the characters in Wicked are ableist and whether or not this fantasy story has ableist aspects. So we're going to talk about that today as well and analyze the story. But before we jump in, if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe using that little button down below. Oh, also, I did want to clarify, I will only be covering the first half of the stage musical Wicked because the first film only covers the first half of the stage musical. So I won't be addressing anything that happens in Act 2 of the stage musical. I'll be waiting to compare Act 2 of the stage musical to the film's sequel when it comes out next year. So yeah, again, we're just gonna focus on the first half of this fantastical story. So first things first, let's talk about who made Wicked. So the musical was written by composer Stephen Schwartz and book writer Wendy Holzman. Now, I did also want to mention that neither of these individuals use a wheelchair. Whether or not that's relevant, I don't know, but we'll see as we talk more about this story. Now, fast forward to now, the Wicked film is out and it's year 2024. The same writers worked on the screenplay for the Wicked film, but they also brought on Dana Fox and actually consulted Marissa Bodie, the actress playing Nessa Rose, who is a full-time wheelchair user. So before we get into everything, let's actually define what ableism is. Ableism is when people treat disabled people as lesser than, inferior, or incapable just because they have a disability. It's the belief that disabled people are inferior, and it often leads to exclusion or discrimination. So basically, as I go through these different plot points, we're going to assess whether or not these characters are acting in an ableist manner or not. So let's see what it looks like as we go through this musical. Okay, so plot point / character number 1, Nessa's father, who is also the mayor of Munchkinland. So in the film and in the musical, Nessa's father is super duper overprotective, especially when it comes to Nessa going away to college at Shiz University. Now, some people look at this and say that Nessa's father is really ableist because he is treating her like she's incapable of going away to college just because she's disabled. But I don't really think that's all that is going into this. It's not that simple. Yes, his behavior is controlling, but it's not just because he thinks Nessa is incapable of going away to college. He's really more concerned about his legacy. If something happens to Nessa, then Alphaba might have to carry on the legacy, which is something that he just can't fathom happening. So his actions are really less about Nessa's disability and are more about his concern for his legacy. They're more selfish and really legacy-driven fears. However, it is important to note that just because someone is concerned about the well-being and safety of a disabled friend or family member doesn't make them ableist. Now, if the person doesn't allow the disabled friend or family member to do things, voice their thoughts and needs, or advocate for themselves because they're disabled, that's a different story. But since Nessa's father is concerned about her, but he's also very overprotective, he's not necessarily ableist. In the stage musical, he specifically enrolls Alphaba at Shiz University because he knows Alphaba's magical abilities will allow her to look after Nessa and help her with her challenges, even though the school agreed to assist Nessa as needed. This is a significant plot point that shows his concern for Nessa's well-being, but it also is rooted in the desire to control the situation and prevent anything from happening to her. He doesn't want to risk his legacy, so he essentially places all the responsibility on Elphaba. In the movie version, however, the father initially plans for Nessa to attend his university independently, believing she can do it on her own. But at the last minute, he has reservations and tells Alphaba to stay on campus and help Nessa, despite Nessa's desire for independence. This last-minute decision adds a layer of fear and selfishness, as the father's motivations seem more about his own anxieties than about Nessa's actual needs. So his behaviors are still controlling and disempowering, but they're not exactly rooted in ableism. It's really more about losing control over his own future and legacy. So in the end, he doesn't see Nessa Rose as less. He actually sees her as more, just in a really messed up way. Okay, so the next plot point that I want to highlight is Glinda's or Glinda's, depending on where you are in the movie, her well-meaning matchmaking skills. So in the movie and in the stage musical, Glinda suggests that Bach invite Nessa to the Ozdust ballroom with the rest of the class, thinking that the relationship will maybe make Nessa happy, and that way she'll also be included and she'll have a date. But also there's some other motivations behind all this, but we'll get into that in a second. So basically, on the surface, this is kind of patronizing and demeaning, but is it actually ableist? Let's see. So in this case, Glinda is acting out of naivety rather than malice. She honestly believes that pairing Nessa with Bach will fix her loneliness and give Nessa what she desires. She thinks that it's unfair that Nessa is so beautiful and no one has asked her out yet. Also, Glinda is interested in Fierro. This is where things get a little complicated. She's interested in Fierro, not Bach, but she doesn't want to brutally reject Bach, so she sets him up with Nessa, hoping that his interest will shift towards Nessa and away from her. So in Glinda's mind, she'll be doing good by setting these two loners up that she perceives are perfect for each other, kind of thing, which is a little messed up. But anyway, this aspect of the situation is highlighted more in the stage musical than in the movie, but it is still relevant to both portrayals. The problem is, Glinda doesn't realize the complexity of the relationships or how Bach feels, so she doesn't really get how emotionally complicated the situation is for everyone involved. In the stage musical, Glinda comes off a bit more selfish and manipulative than in the movie, but it's still clear in both portrayals that she doesn't fully understand the repercussions of her actions. Because, I mean, Glinda thinks everything she does is perfect because she's wanting to be the good witch, you know? So yes, there's some pity involved, but Glinda sees Nessa and just assumes that her life is incomplete without a romantic partner taking her to the dance. But it's not necessarily because she thinks Nessa's incapable. It's more that Glinda has a very simplistic, idealized view of what a relationship is, how relationships work, and has a very limited understanding about how to build meaningful bonds with other people. So it's not really ableism, it's just a little bit clueless and selfish on Glinda's part, and also pretty manipulative. But Glinda does want to make sure that Nessa's included, not discriminated against, which isn't ableist. So, complicated and confusing, right? One kind of does question though, would Glinda include Nessa if she didn't need to get rid of Bach? Would have Glinda invited Nessa herself, or would have someone else invited Nessa? Okay, so in the stage musical version of Wicked, Nessa is portrayed as kind of a loner. She's not very nice. Yeah, she's just not really someone that you really want to be around. But anyway, in the movie version, Nessa is like very nice and very sociable and has lots of friends. So based on the movie version of Nessa, I think that Glinda would have included her either way. So setting Nessa up with Bach was more of a gesture to benefit herself, so she wouldn't have to hurt Bach, basically. But in the stage version of Wicked, I'm not really sure, honestly, that Nessa would have ever made it to the ballroom if it wasn't for the fact that Glinda set her up with Bach, just based on the way that she acts. But if Glinda didn't set her up with Bach, she would have never experienced unrequited love, which ends up causing her to experience an insufferable amount of turmoil and have that whole downward spiral thing occur. So if Nessa was never invited to the ballroom, would she have ever turned evil? Just a thought. But anyway, I totally just went into Act 2 a little bit in this video. That wasn't meant to happen, but you know, I love Wicked, okay guys? I have to talk about it. I just have to. Okay, anyway. But in the end though, let's go back to the definition of ableism, shall we? So does Glinda think Nessa is inferior or incapable? No. Glinda sings, "See that tragically beautiful girl, that one in the chair. It seems so unfair. We should go on a spree, and not she, G. I know someone would be my hero if that someone were to invite her." So basically, Glinda is saying that it isn't fair that someone as beautiful as Nessa should have to go on a spree. Meaning Nessa shouldn't have to try and find a date. It should be given to her because she is so beautiful. But she doesn't consider the fact that Nessa isn't that caring or friendly of a person, which is why no one has invited her. So according to Glinda, everything should be given to Nessa, just like everything's given to her, because if you're beautiful, everything should just be given to you, because you're perfect, basically. Yeah. So this line really highlights Glinda's simplistic and privileged view of life. But Nessa thinks that no one invites her to anything because she's disabled, which is something she really needs to work on, to be honest. A little self-reflection would really help Nessa. Just saying. Secondly, does Glinda discriminate against Nessa? No, she doesn't do that either. She actually includes her. So, I mean, while the entire Nessa, Glinda, Bach love triangle is really awkward and complex and confusing, Glinda herself is just really self-absorbed and kind of vain at this point in the musical, but I wouldn't really say she's ableist. So now we're gonna move on to Bach. So yeah, let's talk about Bach. So like I said before, Glinda suggests that Bach ask Nessa out, and Bach agrees to do so. But he only agrees to do so because he hopes then he'll catch Glinda's eye. Because he actually likes Glinda, not Nessa. He's just trying to impress Glinda. That's the whole point of this whole charade of asking Nessa out. So when Bach takes Nessa to the ballroom, he sees Glinda with Fiyero and realizes he messed up. At first he wants to admit his wrongdoing to Nessa but can't bear hurting her. So he decides to just take advantage of the night with a beautiful girl and have fun. It is important to note that Nessa does say, "It's because I'm in a chair and you feel sorry for me. Well, isn't that right?" This does show that Nessa has some self-doubt and a bit of internalized ableism. She automatically assumes she has been asked out of pity. And the frustrating thing here is that it really wasn't truly out of pity, it was actually for a selfish reason. When Bach is embarrassed about how he has made Nessa feel, he decides to lie and just give Nessa a fun night. He ends up going along with the relationship, hoping he will catch the eye of Glinda. Okay, so now, during the scene at the train station, all of this drama really comes to a head when Nessa realizes that Bach doesn't actually love her and that he actually loves Glinda. So awkward. I think I've said that like a million times, but it's awkward. It's really awkward. Anyway, this hurts Nessa severely. So in the stage musical version, Bach actually confesses that he can't keep faking this relationship. And after Bach runs off, Nessa voices that she thinks she isn't lovable because of her disability, which further illustrates that she has a lot of internalized ableism and self-doubt. And Alphaba tries to console her, but Glinda encourages Elphaba to let Nessa be because she doesn't think Nessa should be coddled. However, in the film version, this moment is really brushed over and it's just communicated through a few looks and glances, which is kind of interesting because I think it's a really integral point in the plot. So I just wonder how that's gonna carry through to part 2. So is Bach being ableist? Honestly, no. He's not treating Nessa as inferior because she's disabled. He's just kind of emotionally immature and doesn't really realize the emotional toll that all of this is gonna end up causing Nessa to deal with. His behavior is really selfish and naive, but I wouldn't really say it's ableist. He just cares about himself. Yeah, and getting what he wants. And he'll do it any way he can, basically. So, after all that, are any of these characters truly ableist? The answer is no, not really. And the reason why I say not really is because I think motivations behind actions are very important. Because motivations and emotions and all that, it's all very complex. It's not simple. And good characters have a lot of depth to them. And these characters are really, really well written and they have a lot of depth. And that's why they're so relatable and interesting. But I mean, they're all acting out of their own selfish intentions, not through the lens that Nessa's incapable or inferior. That's not what's fueling their actions. Glinda and Bach are both very naive people, but they're not being actively cruel or discriminatory towards Nessa. Regarding Nessa in the stage musical though, I really want to talk about this because it's very clear that she has a lot of self-doubt, internalized ableism, and just a lack of self-confidence in general. So out of anyone in this musical, she is actually the ableist one, which is kind of interesting. But I mean, honestly, it's probably due to the fact, like, that the way that her father has treated her over the years. And Nessa just doesn't have, like, the most positive view of disability, and she blames everything on the fact that she's in a wheelchair. But she doesn't really realize the impact of her behavior and her actions, and the fact that she's pretty unkind and has like a bitter personality and focuses her life on trying to be cured. But it's also important to acknowledge that Nessa's relationship to her disability is very valid for some people. I mean, some people do not look at disability as a positive thing, and they're very focused on being cured. And it's just, that's a valid experience for people as they mature and grow. And I think it's important that these emotional turmoils are acknowledged. Everyone's relationship to their disability is different. It's very complex. It's a very complex relationship. It's not just like good or bad. It's not like disability is like good or bad. It's not a simple label like that. In the film Wicked, Nessa has a lot more agency and independence. She speaks up and tells her father that she doesn't need help, which gives her way more independence than in the stage musical, where her father's control is a lot more pronounced. It's also clear that in the movie, Nessa has a lot more confidence, and Elphaba is very supportive of Nessa's independence. While in the film, Nessa does acknowledge that she thinks some people pity her, she does have way more confidence than the stage version of Nessa. And I think this really is a step forward to better disability representation. So what do you guys think? I mean, do you agree with my take on these characters? And how do you feel about Nessa's self-perception in the stage musical versus the film version? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Alright, well that is it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little bell button down below to receive a notification the next time I upload a video. I hope you have a phenomenal day, and I will see you next time. Bye guys. Just knocked that over. That would have been bad. Don't want to knock my water on my computer. Oh gosh. Okay. I don't want to touch the lens. There we go. Haha, success.